when I ask you, what are you feeling? I'm not just asking what's wrong. I've been amazed that sometimes just doing body work, somebody shifts and then they let go of something they've been carrying without even knowing what that was. Often people block it because they think, if I felt this feeling, it would end me. If I really cried, I would never stop. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that sentence. When somebody's able to feel safe enough to mention something, or to let themselves remember something that has held them prisoner for their whole life, and I can be there, just, it's like there's no sound in the room and we're all just, it's magic happening.
Welcome to the Living a Life in Balance podcast. My name is Abdullah Boulad. I'm the founder and CEO of the Balance Rehab Clinic. My guest today is Petro Kohut, a therapist, rolfer, and somatic experiencing practitioner. In this episode, we spoke about the mind-body connection, the effect that trauma leaves on the body, and how his work as a practitioner allows for the safe processing of this trauma through the body. I hope you will enjoy. Petro, what motivates you to do what you do today in the world?
So it started many years ago. So I've done a lot of things in this field leading to where I am now. And the reason I do it now, the reason I love doing it so much and get up every day with the passion I have for it is I see so much need for it. I feel like we're living in a world that maybe takes us right up into our heads, and living in our heads with devices and distractions and polarization and all these other things that are happening. A lot of people are missing this embodied state, and to be able to be with the sensations that are happening in our bodies. Mm-hmm. So to avoid feeling, they run off into addiction of phones and work and other things that distract them from being present, and that ends up meaning that if we're not present, we don't really relate to each other. We relate to the idea of each other, and that doesn't seem to be going very well in the world.
And for how long have you been doing this, and what brought you into this?
I started in body work when I was 19. I started studying massage, and with the idea of getting into like physiotherapy or something like this in university. I met a rolfer. He blew my mind with how he could touch and how he could change things under his hands. I studied everything I could with him. I then spent 10 years traveling around the world and not dedicating myself to more study, but doing the work that that I thought he was doing with me, trying to learn what that was. I read as much as I could about what structural integration is. And I wanted to be able to do that with people, but I hadn't studied it. Studying it I had to go to Europe or America, and I didn't have the funds for that. I didn't have time for that. I was just living my life and trying to figure out what it was that Ida Rolf was trying to do with rolfing, but from the ground up, just by touching people, just by trying to, what does it mean to have an integral structure?
I see. Yes. And when you mentioned some elements of development around the world or globally, what are the global developments today which lead to our disconnect from our body and what surrounds us?
Yeah, everything. I often tell the story of how one of my teachers, after the tsunami in Thailand, she brought a group of somatic experiencing practitioners to Sri Lanka to actually do somatic experiencing and help people release the trauma that they might have experienced watching people die and watching the towns be destroyed by the tsunami, etc. She ended up working with a lot of expats, and they had these translators there, and they were going to do the work with everybody, but the locals weren't coming, and she went looking for them in the markets and had conversations with people. And one of these women said, well, we kind of do that work for ourselves. And took her down to this group of women sitting by the edge of the water, and they were mending nets. and they were singing, and they were laughing, and they were crying, and they were telling stories, and they were being together
Yes.
in the love and the pain and the joy and the sadness that they had lived through and that were living through. I don't think we have that in the West. You know, we live in isolated houses, in isolated communities, and we want to have connection, but we have it through this image of who we are. It's hard to actually connect. And because of that, over the last, say, 100 years or so, I think we need to go the other way. So I try and invent things and do things to help people sit together and be real with each other. And that means be in the pleasure and the pain and the sadness and the joy and whatever's coming up.
I love that. I love that because you know, I have a Lebanese background, and whether you want it or not, every day could happen that someone knocks on your door and just walks in, and that's more the community-based living, being together. And then I was wondering as a child always how the neighbors with my parents and other family members who come together, they just talk and they just exchange about their day, about their feelings and struggles. So I can relate to this a lot. But growing up in Switzerland, it was completely the opposite you can imagine. It's a lovely country. I enjoyed it. I have many good memories and feelings, but not the feeling of a community being that connected. It's more of some form of isolation. So you mentioned a couple of things now. You mentioned body connection, feeling. What does it mean to you, and how can someone understand this concept of connecting with the body?
Yeah, what we really feel happens through the body. You know, when I feel happy, it's a feeling. There's excitement in my chest, and there's tingling in my hands, and it's a feeling that can be experienced in the body. We often don't slow down enough to notice that feeling. And nor sadness, nor the questioning feeling of not being too sure about something, you know. And we might read the paper, and we might read a certain newspaper, and that gives us a certain picture of what's happening in the world, and we just take that information and think that's okay. As long as I'm with that information, I'm okay. But then we hear other things, and we think, well, that must be bad because this is right, and that must be wrong. All of that actually brings up uncertainty. If we really drop into it, it drops into like, I don't know what's going on. I feel confused, or I feel like unsure. I think that might be wrong, but at the same time, I think that person's also seems like they're being honest. So how can I be with both? And I think it's through the body that we can let ourselves settle. Maybe first feel the confusion, feel the knot in the stomach of like, geez, I don't know what's going on here. And then once we let ourselves feel it and breathe, then it sort of, that feeling passes and we settle, and then we can have time to like look into something. But it's the denegation. It's the I don't want to feel uncertain, so I'm just going to grab on that and believe this, and that means I have to say that's wrong. That's, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it's like the way I feel that in being embodied is so important, because it's the way to pass through all the things that we're not sure about. It's like we can make sense through that. We can make sense of the world through knowing, I'm not sure what's happening, but I feel this, so I'm going to settle and then do the next thing.
I'm pretty sure many of those who listen to our today's conversation, they think, I feel my body in a way. If it hurts, I feel it hurts. Is this enough? Or what exactly are you talking about? Where is the level of being disconnected versus starting to feel your body? What is exactly the level of is there some sort of level, or is there black or white?
There's heaps of levels, of course. There's a spectrum. And I often tell this story with people that I start working with. When I ask you, what are you feeling? I'm not just asking what's wrong. Most of the time, that's what people think I'm asking. And so when I say, well, what are you feeling? They say, well, no, this pain's gone, so nothing. And I'm like, well, maybe you can feel the chair you're sitting on. Maybe you can feel the temperature of the air. Maybe you can hear the cars outside or my voice. What are we feeling comes through 5 different senses. And that's in the belly, it's in the skin, it's in everything. And so I say, okay, well, imagine most of the time in our society, when you say, hi, how are you? We're not looking for an answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we we're going to hold up the queue in the supermarket. So in this room with me, I say, okay, when I say, how are you? I want you to notice what's happening and tell me that. And it's like we have to learn a new language. And when we start to learn a language, we have to look at the alphabet. We have to start learning the letters and then the words. And then the words, maybe then sentences and then phrases and then paragraphs and then the story. So that same thing with the body. Like, what are you feeling? Maybe the temperature on the skin is one thing. That's a level.
Yes.
The chair is a level. And then there's, actually, I feel tight in my belly because I'm excited about having this conversation today, or I feel a little excited in my chest, my heart's beating a little faster. We can get more and more and more present with that. And at the same time, not be prisoner to that. It's not that feeling means that we should lay down everything because my heart beats a little faster. No, it's just a notice. It's there and it will pass. It will always change. Everything's always changing. So sensing is also allowing, not suddenly making, oh, I have heat here. That's a big deal. What is it? Is it a tumor? Do I have to focus
not judging.
Much on not judging?
And I feel sometimes the mind plays a big role in answering such a question. How do you feel, or what do you feel in your body? Like we may give an answer based on an intellectual element of how I should feel. How is your experience working with clients who are disconnected or give more likely more intellectual, mind-based answers?
Yeah, it's like a tug of war. It's like a tug of war. It's not easy sometimes because a lot of people, it's really dangerous to feel. Maybe they haven't felt for so long, and the pain that they lived through was so bad that to feel now opens up a doorway to something they don't want to sense. So I take it very slowly. I don't force it onto anybody, and it's also why I do both things. I work through the body. I do touch work. I do Rolfing, so people can get a sense of their body, and I say, move your hand while I work on your forearm, and they sense their body again.
Yes.
And then they can maybe then sit with me and put names to, I feel loose here, I feel a little bit tighter here. Okay, so that's starting to put letters and words together in their new alphabet language that they're putting together.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. It sounds simple elements you bring into, but they have powerful impacts on the individual. Yeah. I wonder what brings in the first place someone to be disconnected from a body, from a childhood perspective. When we grow up, we move around. What brings us at what point in our life does it happen that we get disconnected?
Yeah. I guess every day. When we are safe to feel what's happening, when we're with our kids and something goes wrong and we tell them off and they get scared of us, if we can then go to them and say, hey, I know I was a bit aggressive then, but we repair it by saying, hey, what are you feeling? Are you okay? Oh, yeah, I was scared because you said this and I didn't know if I should do this or not. And I'm like, okay, I'm really sorry about this part. I was trying to protect you from this thing that was dangerous and I raised my voice. Are you okay now? And we repair that and they feel like what they're feeling is okay. It's okay that they felt scared, they felt tight, they was, maybe a tear came and then they let it go and then they're back. Yes. Most people don't. In the 50s and 60s, that wasn't the sort of the way kids were raised, and maybe in generalizing, of course, if you're told to just suck it up, You know, if you're told, stop crying,
Be strong.
be strong, boys don't cry, then to feel an emotion suddenly becomes, I'm not supposed to feel that, so I have to shut that down and just get on with things, you know? So it happens all through our lives, because sometimes I'm at work and it's not normal, it's not okay to feel my emotions because I'm with somebody. So I have to hold them and I have to breathe and I have to let that settle, because whatever I've heard might be very touching. And I can allow myself to show that I've been touched a little, but I'm not going to go to pieces thinking, oh, if that ever happened to me, what would I do?
Yes.
But I could be very touched by it because I could relate to my own family and my own life. And wow, if that ever happened to me, what would I do? But that's mine to take home and to take to my therapist and take to my supervisor and then be heard and be felt, so I can release that. So doing the work on ourselves is, I'm totally lost now as to what your question was. But
yeah, at what point in life people may get disconnected from their body? That's I mean, it could be certainly some life circumstance, some events, some traumatic experiences.
Yeah.
So what is, from your experience, examples of those which get disconnected the most?
I don't know the most, if I could say, but there's the type that is the upbringing of the person over, say, 15 years of being with parents who were not very well regulated and not very caring for the emotional upbringing of the child. That's one type of trauma.
Educational,
the
parenting.
educational of the person grows up knowing that to feel my emotions isn't right. I have to just get on with my work and I have to get good grades, or I have to be tough, or I have to be whatever my parents tell me I have to be. And then there's the other part, which is, there's a car accident, there's an abuse, there's something that happens in one moment that changes the person's feeling of safety.
Yes.
And they shut it down. You know, we have this fight, flight, freeze. The freeze means block it. And if I don't afterwards have the space and safety to then gently unfreeze that energy and release it, that might be frozen for a very long time.
Yes. Who can be this safety net? Is it always the parents at home? Has to be them, or who else in the surrounding of a child or a growing young adult is important to be surrounded by?
It really can be anybody. You know, it depends who the child can find safety in.
Yes. So something comes into my mind, like boarding schools are very famous around the world, especially in higher earning environments. So what happens to these children or young adults going to boarding school, being disconnected from their families and having to be in a completely new or strange environment to them? What are your thoughts about that concept?
Having not gone myself, I have a hard time knowing exactly what it's like. You know, I can take my information from friends who've gone or from films and things like this. But in general, I think if there's structure within the boarding school that allows the child to have a connection where they can actually talk things through with somebody who might be able to be supportive, then I think it's great. If that doesn't exist, maybe not so great.
Yes.
A lot of people that I've treated, the pain that they have has actually made them go and be really successful in their lives. You know, that workaholicness of like, I'll just be great at what I do so that I don't have to feel whatever I blocked growing up. Okay, some amazing things happen in the world. I've often asked myself the question, hey, should I really try and fix this in somebody or help them heal?
Yes.
If that means that they might not then go on and do these amazing things in the world. Now, my hope is those people, when they do heal, maybe the workaholicness changes, but what they've trained their whole lives to learn at being great at can then be done with an openness and a spaciousness and a care for the broader community, which means it's even better for the world. So going back to the boarding schools, maybe certain elements of that shutting down of the inner child's feelings and all of that, maybe it ends up making very productive, successful people in the world, but maybe who aren't actually happy inside,
emotionally connected,
kind to the people around them, and other things that are really important.
Yes.
So it's a tricky one.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. Is there, from your experience with all the clients you have been working with in the past, a common factor or a common incidents in life which could lead to such a disconnect? Or is it very individual how someone perceives it from his own experience? And
it's very individual. Very, very individual, because some people go through really tough things, but they happen to have had an upbringing or just be maybe even born with certain qualities that allows them to see that challenge and face it and grow through it and then move bigger, become bigger. You know, I talk about what trauma is to me is a challenge that I couldn't overcome. You know, maybe the car came too quickly, or maybe there was a group of people I couldn't fend off, or, you know, it was too much for me at that point in time. You know, a challenge that comes that I can get over is not a trauma. It's something that I grew through and I become bigger. And the next time something like that comes, I know I've done it before and I can get bigger and bigger and bigger. And even a thing that's traumatic in the moment, but then is healed through repair and recognizing that in that moment I couldn't do anything, but I protected myself. I survived through it, and then I healed, and I released all the fear that was blocked out in me, and I healed the traumatic side through some therapy or somatic experiencing or some conversation with a loved one. And then I grew because I realized that if that happened next time, I'm going to be more aware of it, and maybe I'm going to train in certain things that'll make me more capable. But it's when the trauma isn't healed that the person stays feeling small, and they're a victim of that trauma rather than having digested it and processed it. And then
yes. So bringing up trauma into body connection, trauma and body, how do you understand this connection? Is every traumatized person has a disconnect to their body, or is every and the other way around?
I used to think that working from the body up could help everybody, and that was why I studied Rolfing. And Ida Rolf had this big philosophy of how she was doing basically some kind of psychotherapy on the person, but through the changing of their connection with their body. In doing it for many years, I got to a place where I saw that, you know, many people had transformative experiences. Some people got up off the table straight back into the same pattern that they sat down, lay down on the table with. And I was like, well, did I do anything there?
Yeah.
And so that made me go into looking at somatic experiencing and studying that because I needed other tools. So some people, I think, close off parts of their body. Other people go fully into their body. You know, there are some dancers that are highly traumatized people with amazing connections to their body. So it's a very interesting world that I don't really understand, and I'm always learning with every person that I see.
Yes. So talking about Rolfing, let's go a bit deeper, because you mentioned that now a couple of times, and that was like the origin which led then to multiple other educations or further educations you went through. So where does Rolfing coming from, and what exactly is it? Can you explain what do you do in a session? How is the outcome? How many sessions? What can you guide us through this process of Rolfing, please?
Sure. So it's a method designed to help reorganize the structural integrity of the human. So as we grow up, we learn to walk, we trip, we fall, we have surgeries, we learn skills, we dedicate ourselves to certain sports. All of those things shape us to be who we are right now, sitting in front of each other. A Rolfer looks at a person and says, okay, I'm going to I see that the knees are pointing inwards a little, the shoulders are dropped forward, the head's forward. We can sort of take the person apart a little bit and then say, okay, but where do I start? What does this person need to have their first step to feel more integral, to feel more balanced? And so we work with the shoulders and the breathing and the neck, and then we work with the pelvis and the way that the pelvis is either really arched with a big lumbar lordosis, big curve in the lower back, or really tucked under. So we find more neutral, what's more neutral for that person. And then we do some movement work so they can embody what it's like to walk with this newfound position of neutral, not thinking that they'll keep it forever, but thinking that it's an experience. The brain learns, the brain's always feeling something new. It's taking on new information. And then when we do our next movements, we can maybe choose from a broader category of possibilities because our brain has received more information. I often give this example of the violin player. Like if I don't play the violin today, but if I started today, you'd all hate it. But after a year or two, it would be all right. And after 10 years, 20 years, it would be beautiful. If I practiced every day, right? Now, every day practicing, I'd be building neural connections between my hand and my brain and my hand and my brain. And the more highway I have, the more I can start to be more skillful and put my emotion into it, etc. So Rolfing is like learning to play the violin with your whole body. It's like we touch and we move and we get you to explore and feel. And then each session breaks down and looks at certain aspects.
Yes.
We don't think that it's, I can't in one session figure out all of your postural issues. I have to go somewhere, I have to do something, and then I have to let you have that experience, and then you live for a couple of weeks with that experience or a few days, and then we go to the next one, and we look at the feet and how are the feet working and the knees and how's that alignment, and can you push through the feet, and can you flex, and can your toes have mobility? When we do that with the whole body, they end up with a lot of information, and then they have a new awareness of what it's like to walk with all this information, and then that's an ability to be present with other people with more of that centered alignment,
Interesting. I can imagine when you work with clients from the body up, they will end up also releasing some emotional elements to it. Are there specific areas in the body where you feel have a lot of effect on some of the clients you work with?
Yeah, very often around the neck, through the chest, the heart. These places are
being tense in this field.
Yeah, we're mammals. We have certain muscles in the neck. We have muscles in the chest. We have muscles in the abdomen that are designed that if we're under attack, they will tense up and we will be protected. We are the only mammal that walks with our whole front facing strangers.
Yeah.
So most of the other ones are on all fours, and that's very easy from that position to protect even more. Yeah. So when we start to say, okay, now let's open your neck and get movement here, and let the person maybe comes with a head position like this, and we want to help them explore and experience what it's like to have the head more like this. Some people stand up off the table and they're like, I can't stand up like this. It would be too vulnerable. Everybody would look at me. It's safer for me to be here. And so I then work with them on that.
So is it correct when I assume that Rolfing fixes kind of the scars someone has experienced through his life?
Yes, but more than scars, just patterns. When you started to walk as a kid, the parents just go, "Yay!" Nobody says, maybe let your shoulders drop and let that leg swing through differently. And we don't get corrected on the things we do. We just do them. And then we wonder why we have sore knees after 40 years or 50 years or 60 years of doing those things. So all of our joint organizations should be kind of square through the middle of the joint. And if we have, bow legs or knees dropping inwards and dropped arches of our feet, those joints will be pushing more on one side than the other, and that means more wear and tear on one side and not enough of action and pushing and releasing on the other side. And then we have discs that have problems after years. So it's about creating the organization of the line of the way that the force should move through those joints, so that we have less unhealthy degeneration and more just. I mean, we're all aging. We're not going to get younger forever at all.
I mean, longevity is moving fast.
yeah, but we can do it better. Some people do it better than others, and why is that? Because we can organize ourselves better emotionally too.
I wonder, how is the body affecting our emotions, like how our posture in this case affects our mental health or feelings, or is it the other way around, or both ways?
I think both ways, yeah, for sure. I mean, when I feel sad, do I want to take really deep breaths? No. I want to be a little bit more on the exhale, so I stay in that place. But if I've been sad for years, maybe then that's a pattern that my ribs have learned, that's the normal thing for my stomach and my ribs and my diaphragm to do, and the organs have adjusted to that limited space. And maybe I've also been sitting at a desk and maybe riding a bike to get over things at the end of the day, and all of those postures and the sofa, and it's all about this.
What practical elements or in daily life would you suggest to avoid this negative impacts on your posture and body mind connection?
Move it or lose it. Yeah. Explore,
being active.
Explore, be active. I don't necessarily think that any one activity is the thing. I know yogis who take it too far and injure themselves, but I know cyclists and bodybuilders and people who go to the gym. It's all good. I think, as Buddha spoke, it's the middle way. You do a little bit of everything, and you sort of learn that you can be flexible and strong and adaptable, and look at the places where you don't want to look and strengthen those.
Yes, and I could also think about change what you do regularly. So not to stick into one routine, but maybe after a while implement something new, so the body gets more challenged in its form and being.
Yeah. I mean, look for what you're really terrible at, and get a little less terrible at that.
Yes, that's good.
And that's hard. It's hard to do because we don't like being terrible at things.
How can someone do this? How can someone do this? If I stand in front of a mirror, look at myself, what should I look at exactly, and how can I understand the patterns of being not embodied?
It's hard to do ourselves, Even for myself, I go to see somebody and feel their hands on me, and then learn about myself, and then learn, okay, wow, I didn't even realize I was doing that. I was just living me as me, doing the things, and I'm out and I'm doing. So it's about bringing that attention inwards. And some people can do it through a good yoga practice. If you have a really good teacher and they guide you through and they help you learn what you're doing. Because if you're doing it with the same pattern you've always done it, you're probably just reinforcing those patterns. The same as going to the gym and building muscles. If you're building it around the pattern of the shoulders and the head, then you're going to build strength around that pattern. So you kind of need to have somebody encouraging you to feel something new. And that can be through so many different types of therapy, but generally not just a massage. Something that just relaxes you, maybe it isn't giving you information. It's wonderful, and I did it for many, many years, and I love to go and receive it. But you have to go to somebody who's going to challenge your pattern and say, how about trying this for a moment? In a way that your nervous system feels safe to explore this new thing.
So it's like, or I would compare it like it's difficult to do a heart surgery on yourself. So you need someone who does it for you or with you, with your support.
I mean, I like to say to people, I'm not the one fixing you, because I've worked on enough people that didn't let me help them, that were tight and were unwilling and unable, or I couldn't meet them in a place safely enough for them to feel safe enough to drop the tension. You know, our bodies, if you've ever come to like somebody who's been renovating your house and they have these solid shoulders, and you know, give them a pat on the shoulder and you feel like it's just cement. That person, given a general anesthetic, it's putty.
Yeah.
It's soft. That the way I understand that is that, and I could be wrong, maybe somebody can post a reply to say if I'm getting this wrong, but it's the way we know ourselves. The way I wake up in the morning and I know myself has a certain contraction in my fascia and my muscles, and that means I look like who I look. I don't walk around looking like this all the time.
Yeah.
Some people do, because they've done it so often that they've just fixed like that, and then they wake up in the morning and that's how they know who they are. Same with the shoulders. But if under general anesthetic it's just soft putty, then who is it that's doing it? You know? And so when I'm working with somebody and they're saying, yeah, I have a knot here, please fix my knot. I'm like, all right, well, it's your knot.
Yes.
It's your knot. I can point the finger there, but you're the one that's going to have to let it go. You know, and and I try and do it in a way that is gentle enough and direct enough that they feel safe enough to say, oh, maybe I can let this go. And then their brain says, wow, I don't have to be like this all the time.
Yes.
And maybe that means I don't have to feel stressed all the time. Because when I'm feeling here, I feel like, oh, I can exhale and I'm not stressed and I don't feel like I'm being attacked. And so the body holds things, but you have to connect to all the levels to help them.
But it cannot be corrected from the body side. So if I think like the psychosomatic effects, where more the mental side affects the body, we have to work on both levels, I assume.
Yeah, sometimes. I've been amazed that sometimes just doing body work, somebody shifts and then they let go of something they've been carrying without even knowing what that was. And they just decide that now they're, 40-something years old, and their shoulders feel much better like this. And maybe a tear came during the session, but they're not even sure why that tear came, or maybe it was just a really deep exhalation that suddenly felt like they could put a weight down that they've been carrying. Now, that person doesn't really have to go back and dig up all their past. They've done something that makes them realize that they're in 2025 and their shoulders are down and they're good with that. Now, that's wonderful when that happens. Sometimes we have to do the other side of the thing as well.
Yes.
And sort of have a chat about, you know, if they come back 2 weeks later and their shoulders are back up like this, then we say, okay, so what is that like? And we do the somatic approach to get them to notice it, and then maybe go into unwinding a little bit of whatever they've lived through.
So what you try to do is to connect to the body and to release certain area, which is certainly is having an effect on releasing also mental stress or distress, which is beautiful. But this also, you mentioned a couple times now, somatic experiencing, somatic work. What led you from Rolfing go into the somatic experiencing part, and how is it supporting your Rolfing work?
Yeah. I heard about it many times. Many of my Rolfing teachers directed us to books about somatic experiencing. And in reading Waking the Tiger, which is Peter Levine's first book, I really connected to the work. I connected to what it was. Then I went to a workshop and had an experience in the workshop, and that changed how I was. And I started being more sensitive to the way the nervous system shows up of the person. That was many years ago. But with that one training, already my bodywork sessions were different, because I wasn't pushing the client. If I noticed that their face got a bit flushed and their breathing changed, I would back off and maybe do something else that could help them feel a bit safer, and then go back and touch again. And then we had these big emotional releases occurring on the table. Yeah. What actually happened was that a few weeks in, after that training, somebody started to have an emotional release and they started speaking to me in Spanish about what was happening. And my Spanish was good, but it wasn't good enough to follow her. And I had to say, okay, hang on, stop there. Can you tell me what you were saying? And I felt so shocked and out of control myself with what was happening on the table that she was fine, but I didn't feel like I was able to really help her. Afterwards, even doing the same things that I was doing, people didn't have these emotional releases anymore. And I put that down to that all came back when I went to train in somatic experiencing. It all came back because I felt safer in the work myself. But it really showed me that I need to be safe, firstly. I need to be safe in myself. And when I learn about these ways to track the nervous system of another person, I have to also be really connected to my own nervous system and how safe I feel and how grounded I feel, so I can be a safe place for the other person to have an experience that is a little vulnerable.
I really can relate to providing the space. That's what therapy should be about. It's like helping someone to get to the water, but they have to drink themselves. When you do somatic experiencing with someone, how does a session look like?
Kind of like this. We sit across from each other in some way that we feel comfortable. And the way I structure the first couple of sessions is thinking about us as animals. We're mammals. Mammals need senses of safety. You know, if you were a dog, you'd have to smell the corners of this room and maybe pee in a couple of places and find out where there's some water to feel like you're safe, and then you can curl up and lie on the sofa and be okay. And maybe even learn new tricks and maybe do something that's challenging. Now, when somebody comes to me, they normally have things that they'd like help with. And so I need to make sure that their animal feels safe. And that can start from getting to know who I am, me explaining a little bit about the work, them telling me about what they've brought, not going into the heavy stuff straight away. You know, that for the heavy stuff, you need to feel really, 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 really safe. And that maybe comes after getting to know me 3 or 4 times. Some people want to bring it up in the first time. And then my work is to say, okay, maybe you've mentioned that, but notice what you're feeling in the body. We do a little bit of work on that piece right there, but we slow it down so that they get a sense that even if they talk about difficult things, they're safe in this room. You know, it's really about, if we track our nervous systems, and I'm feeling kind of excited, I have to be aware of that, because if I let that get too much, I can shut down. That excitement can get overwhelming. Same with sadness and fear and other things that we might have lived through that might be connected to certain memories. So I really start with building a rapport, making people feel safe, talking about stories of animals and talking about different metaphors that help them get pictures that might help them. I talk about the senses and get them to notice their senses, get to notice the temperature of the skin and the touch of their clothes, the sounds they can hear. And with that, they start to put words to things that they're picking up, which later becomes really handy because we need to use those words to stay present to the senses. I kind of think of the senses as being the anchor of a boat. You know, we have 5 anchors that can help us stay present to where we are. I can see where I am, I can hear where I am, I can touch, smell, taste. Now, if I'm talking about something that's very troubling from my past, I can completely lose touch with reality very easily. I can go into a sobbing, shaking mess very quickly. My anchors help me stay present. You know, I have to have really good anchors, and I have to practice using them to stay present. And my work as the somatic experiencing practitioner is to make sure that if they're talking about something that I can see is difficult for them, that I actually say, okay, I'm going to interrupt what you're talking about. Notice what's in your body right now. Notice the chair and notice the feeling in the body. That sensation of tightness in the guts, the tightness in the jaw, the shakiness. Okay, and we pause talking. We put the conversation up on the shelf. We say, we'll come back to that later, maybe even next session. We don't have to take the Band-Aid off in one go. But notice something has been awakened already. Stay with that. Stay with the room. Stay with your anchors. And maybe I've set up anchors that feel safe, like the touch of the cloth that they're wearing. Maybe we've talked about the painting and they've enjoyed the golden color of the painting. So the senses keep them here, even though they've brought something up that might be really scary. The senses keep them here, and my job is to like really keep them, engaged with me and the present moment, because anything that has a beginning has an ending. But when we get locked on something, sometimes that ending's further away. When we can stay present to the anchors that we have, that actually that dissipates that energy of exciting and the fear and the tension and the heat in the body. It passes quite quickly. Yeah. But we have to stay present. Yeah. If we keep feeding the dialogue in our head about the trauma that was happening, if we keep thinking about that and thinking about it and thinking about it, we're just pouring more fuel on the fire, and the body will have even more reaction, or we might just shut down completely. So It's a delicate dance with somebody else's nervous system, keeping them present, basically so that the thing they lived through can stop being something that's still happening and can start to be a memory of what happened many years ago. That's what we do in this work. We change the trauma being something I'm still living through and make it able to be a memory in the past.
So I understand that safety is key when you work with clients, somatic experiencing, Rolfing, and releasing trauma or certain types of emotions and feelings. When do you feel there is the right moment to go deeper? Because there is the sensitivity of overwhelming versus allowing processing.
Yeah. It's a dance. It's a dance that I often ask the person, once we've built rapport and talked about different structures and got them in touch with their senses, and we've worked on some very small pieces. I often start with innocuous, bothersome things in their life. Some guy who always takes your car parking space. Small things that are bothersome but make me get angry or sad or bothered. We can work with those. That's a great way to start. And then they have an experience that even that fires them up, and they have a body reaction, and then that passes, and then they feel better, and they feel, wow, that was interesting, because I felt this experience, but now I feel like I'm back. So once they've had that a couple of times, then I say, okay, you've mentioned that you've got this situation with X and Y and Z. Which would you like to bring up? And maybe let's start with the easiest one. And then we just, as that dialogue comes, often the easiest one will lead to the most difficult one organically in the same moment, because we tend to have links between the situations in our lives.
And you play the dance also between body and talking, the mind, to process what comes up, I understand.
Yeah. Often I'll say, okay, we've done some somatic experiencing. Let's do some Rolfing. We get them on the table and they start to learn about their body and move and explore. And then with that experience, they're more connected and have more ground. And when they stand up, they feel more stable. So the nervous system feels more stable. And with that more stability, maybe they sit down and they say, actually, I'd like to talk about this other thing. And then we go deeper.
Yes. So we talked about trauma here and the connection to Rolfing and somatic experiencing, which is known for trauma, part of a trauma therapy. What type of other conditions you work with? What is the majority of conditions most clients would come to you for your work?
Most people come through pain. Most people come because
Physical pain.
physical pain or could be emotional pain. Anxiety is a big one now that they come through. So pain that they're really struggling to get beyond. What's interesting and kind of difficult is that either side of who come, so whether it's they're coming because of the anxiety or because of the shoulder pain, it tends to be that we need all my guns, all my tools. I think that the person with the anxiety is really benefited if they go through some Rolfing sessions. The person who's coming in with the shoulder pain, often just in a conversation before they get on the table, maybe after the first or second or third session, already as they're speaking about how the weeks have been between sessions, they can connect with that sensation. My shoulder's better, but now I feel tightness in my neck or tightness here. And then we do somatic experiencing in the interview process. And then something comes up and then they shed a tear and they feel lighter. And I say, okay, great, we've done that. Let's come to the table and continue. They come from all kinds of things. I mean, Rolfing has the benefit that when it really flourished in the 70s and 60s, it was part of what they call the human potential movement in the West Coast, in San Francisco, or in Big Sur and Esalen.
Okay.
That hub of the human potential movement was this place of like, if you want to reach your potential as a human, you go there and you do these different therapies and you grow, and that's what I love the most, is when somebody comes to me and they're like, I would love to be better in my world, and I notice that I'm held back by these fears and this pain and these patterns. So I'm like, great. If that openness is there, it's the easiest place to begin, because they're ready for anything, and they're honestly wanting to be helped to look inwards. If somebody comes in with a tightness and a stiff neck, it's kind of a distraction to the work.
Yes.
I have to focus on that pain all the time until that's better before we can actually go with the other stuff.
I imagine you have been working with a lot of clients with their struggles and pains. So what has touched you the most or had the most effect on these clients?
It's a beautiful experience to watch everybody find some shift in their life. As a rolfer, it's beautiful to watch them shed physical patterns that they've had. I worked with one guy and we did pure Rolfing sessions, and I thought I was a complete failure while I did them, because he was one of these guys. I did the work, he stood up, and he stood up in the same little man pattern that he had before he got on the table. And I'd work on the table and I'd get him to experience and move. And I thought, okay, that's the movement I think he's been lacking. And he'd stand up and he'd be this small guy again. And then, we finished the 10 sessions that we worked together before, and luckily I saw him on a train. It was like 6 months later, and I saw him on a train, and he was bigger and broader in his shoulders and taller, and he had a new suit on, and I went up and saw him, and we chatted. He'd left his partner, he'd changed his job, he just filled in, but it took time. So I was really, that for me was like, I hope some of that was about me, what I did, because I would love to have been a part of that transformation. And I think I was, but who knows really. Then there's other ones that are really, really deep. A lot of people who've had very difficult things happen to them. When somebody's able to feel safe enough to mention something, or to let themselves remember something that has held them prisoner for their whole life, and I can be there, just, it's like there's no sound in the room, and we're all just, it's magic happening. It's really magic happening, that the person is able to have something come up, but they're not running away from it anymore. And they recognize it as being something that is from their past, and maybe see it from another perspective even, and see that there was something else happening at the same time, you know, rather than be locked on that one image that's haunted them their whole life. They're a different person in the next word that comes out of their mouth. And for me, that's just gold. I can't, it's the most beautiful thing to witness.
Yeah, very beautiful. And I know the impact you have on multiple clients. I know I have here in front of me one of the feedbacks I received from a client without asking. He just sent it actually this week, couple days ago, and was very thankful for. I will read it. What he wrote
You're gonna embarrass
to me.
Yeah.
No, it's so. Petra is such an unreal person, man, therapist, you name it. I can't explain how much he has helped me through a tough time in my life. His voice, his patience, and direct ability to say stop. What is in your body? What is your body telling you? What do you feel, and where do you feel it? Such an amazing part or weapon to the balance program.
Yeah.
How do you feel
he was a pleasure
hearing
to
this?
work with. Yeah. I'm touched. I'm really thankful that I can be useful for people. I mean, that's the reason why I do this, is to try for me to know that man is now in the world and somewhere more able to be present when he's sad or angry or anything that comes up for him. He can be there in his center, feel it, allow it, not run away from it, not defend. And I think he is already a bigger part of his world, because more of him is able to be in his world. The same for me in the work, that it's allowed me to not run from things that I would shy from. So I face those fears. I recognize they're not going to end me. You know, when a difficult feeling comes up, often people block it because they think, if I felt this feeling, it would end me. You know, if I really cried, I would never stop. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that sentence. Yeah. If I really cried, I don't think I'd ever stop. They always stop. But you know, when we build that safety and they allow, it's often just one or two tears, and it's changed. It's not rocket science. I have this beautiful phrase that a teacher of mine said. It's like, it's not complicated, but it's not easy. You know, we live in a world, and I have to be inside myself, and not trying to give solutions to the person. And as a man, that's what I want to do. I want to fix problems. But I have to be there and say, okay, you feel this. So let's feel it. I'm here with you. Just feel it. When they allow themselves to feel it, suddenly they're not afraid of it.
So they start trusting more in themselves. And this is how the necessary tools and important tools they bring and take with them home and help them through their life.
Yeah.
Talking about taking someone through life, I know you have a young daughter, and you're a father, you're a parent, you and your wife. What do you do in this world today, in your micro world at home, within your family, to avoid trauma or to optimize the outcome of your child's childhood?
I think that one of the biggest shifts is that I stay away from too many distractions now. You know, I used to want to know what's happening in the world more. Now it's enough with my work and my family to just be focused on my small world, because that helps me be more centered. When I go out and learn a lot of stuff about what's happening in politics and in the world, that's a lot to carry. So I choose to go there less now. So that's something I do for myself to feel more able to be there, because she's a little amazing angel and demon, and she's poking my buttons all the time. So I'm not a perfect result of a human. I'm human, so I can get sad and angry and touched. And what I think will help her grow up really well is that I I am committed to always repair when any interruption in love happens. You know, if I get angry and yell, then I go and I make sure I repair, whether that's with my friend or my wife or my child. And I think that knowing that she will grow up knowing that, okay, her dad's wonderful, but he's not perfect.
Yes.
I think that's important.
Yeah, I heard you saying now the repairing multiple times through our conversation. So repairing is the key, especially with children, but maybe also with adults, in any kind of relationship.
Yeah. And the connection to the body, which I keep doing, I keep going for sessions for myself so I can stay connected to my body, and I could do things like Qigong and yoga so that I'm present with my body. That helps me know when I have to repair, you know,
Yes.
because I can stay in touch with myself. And I didn't mention one thing, but I have a men's circle that I am part of. And that's a huge piece for me because it's a place where every week for a couple of hours, I sit with anywhere between 5 and 20 men, and we talk, we share, we hold a space, we hold a safe, confidential space for each other to be present. Because I recognize, like I said, with the fishing nets and the women with the fishing nets, we miss that.
Yes.
So I had to create that, and now I have that, and it's a beautiful part of my life that helps me every week stay in touch with, okay, where am I going well and where am I not so well?
How does it look like exactly? It's like you do a circle and everyone talks about his week, or how do you do this practically?
Yeah, so it's something that I created, but I don't lead it all the time. We share the leadership. If somebody feels like they're moved to lead, they do. We have certain standards and rules, confidentiality being the biggest one of the standards. So we have a safe place to be together. And yeah, we will do little check-ins. We'll do some movement work first to be in our bodies and move from the state of being in the world to being in what we call the man cave. It's the basement in my studio. And from that place, after doing some movement, we do a little round of check-in of like, what do I need to share?
Yeah.
Not just what am I doing, but what I have this available moment of confidential space with other men who are ready to listen to me. So how would I benefit most sharing with these men? And that's pushing the edge. Every time I can push my edge a little further and be vulnerable. And if I can do that and recognize I just was vulnerable and nothing bad happened, and everybody said, yeah, I feel that way too. And I'm like, wow, I'm not alone.
Yes.
So a little part of me feels like I have this circle of men that understand me and have heard me and have been with me now for almost 9 years.
Yeah. So talking about clients and disorders, issues, how do you protect yourself from all this? We discussed few elements like your circle, man circle. How do you set your boundaries, and what do you do to stay in balance all the time?
Well, I accept that I won't be in balance all the time. So my self-love and acceptance that sometimes I'll be reactive and defensive or whatever, that's a big piece, acceptance. And also the acceptance comes from the place that I know how I would like to live and how I love to live and the relationships I love to have. And so remembering what I would love to have can then come from, I'm getting defensive here. I can acknowledge it, apologize for it, and move past it rather than defending it and having to be right. And so the self-care of getting therapy myself and having supervision, so I've got help with clients that I might be seeing, then having body work sessions, and simply, the limiting of the social media on my phone, listening to good books when I'm driving the car, not being too engaged in stuff that is difficult to hold, but otherwise filling myself up with stuff that's inspiring.
Yes.
So that I'm rich with that inspiration and I can be better in my day-to-day.
I love what you said about the intention, and intention is for me always like an important thing to do in life, not just for what is my life vision, but also an intention for every conversation I have, intention when when I'm with my wife, what outcomes do I want with my children? So I think many people don't think about these micro intentions in their life and with individual people. And if I would think about it, just this week, I refresh my intention, what I want to have with my wife, because sometimes life happens and then you go on autopilot and then you get stressed and then you say something maybe you wouldn't have said if you are more grounded in that moment. So refreshing the intention is key, and I love that.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a last question for you. If there is one thing you would give to the world, to every human in the world, what would you tell them? What would you want them to do in their life?
Maybe the knowledge that, like we said before, it might not be easy to face these things, but it's quite simple. You know, it doesn't have to be complicated, and it doesn't have to be a really big thing. You know, it's the next step. And if I'm willing to face myself and what comes up, then everybody around me benefits. You know? So to know if it is simple, and if we're reaching out for some kind of help, whether it be the women in the fishnet mending circle, or whether it's AA or NA or balance, or that, those small steps make such a big difference. You know, and life can be quite beautiful. You know, I really believe heaven isn't somewhere we go after we die. Heaven is here when we are honest with the people around us, when we're not hiding who we are, when we're respectful to our parents. You know, kind of what they say in the Bible. It's kind of how it is here, but it's not like it's after we die we get there. It's like actually here. Some people are in hell walking down the street, and you see them, you see it on their face, you know. And I can be in hell if I'm like unable to process something and get out of something. But if I can have support and reach for it and grow through something, then wow, how beautiful life can be. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I enjoyed our conversation today, and thank you for being here. And I think what you just shared has been valuable to a lot of people. I hope they take on these hints and little hints to do some little change, maybe it or big for them in their life. And I want to thank you also for all the work you have been doing for the balance. And I know, and I speak with many of them, and not just this one ex-client who has been with us, but also many others, and they appreciate your work a lot. And thank you for all your work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for creating this space and this thing that we all get to help more people within. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.